Kia ora, everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've been really looking forward to this Notebook LM webinar, and I very much hope you're going to find the next 45 minutes worthwhile. If I haven't met you before, my name's Lynn Lavery. I run a company called Academic Consulting. We're an Auckland-based research company that specialises in teaching research methods and research software. And through academic consulting, I run a program called Research Accelerator, which some of you may have come across before. In fact, I can see a few previous members in the group today, which is an online community of practice for researchers. So all of that means that I spend a lot of my time helping researchers get to grips with the tools that make their work easier. And today's tool, NotebookLM, is one of my absolute favourites. So a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. Today is going to be a live demonstration, so you don't need to do anything except watch. So sit back, relax, enjoy, hopefully, what I'm going to cover today. The other thing I just wanted to say before we get stuck into talking about what NotebookLM is in the actual demonstration, whenever you are considering using an AI tool, it is incredibly important that you're familiar with your own organisation's AI policies and what is allowed to be used. So I can't answer the am I allowed to use this question today that I'm sure some of you will be probably asking once I get underway. We've got folk registered from almost 40 different organisations and the answers will be different across. So I always recommend that researchers find the AI policy for their organisation, they bookmark it, and you make sure that you come and check back regularly. This is obviously a very fast-moving field, and policies are regularly being updated to reflect that. Second thing I want to say, I'm going to be focusing today on using NotebookLM for literature. For me personally, I don't feel comfortable uploading confidential research data to a tool like NotebookLM, even if it's anonymised. I think it's really important that as researchers, we interact with these tools in a way that aligns with our personal values. And that is a particular line in the sand that I have drawn for myself. Now, if you feel comfortable working with research data in NotebookLM, it's certainly something you could do, but it's not the focus of today's session. And if you do decide to go down that road, please, please, please make sure it meets any ethical obligations you have to your research participants and what you've agreed with your local ethics committee as well. I will come back to that point briefly a little bit later. But just in case anyone is brand new to NotebookLM, let's just talk about what it actually is. So NotebookLM is a free tool. It's developed by Google. You sign in with your Google account. You create what's called a notebook, and then you upload your sources to it. And in terms of the kinds of sources that you might include, PDFs are probably a really key one. And that could be PDFs of journal articles or book chapters, your own notes, maybe in Microsoft Word form, or you could copy and paste your own notes in. Web pages, PowerPoint presentations, even YouTube videos. And the idea behind how NotebookLM works, it reads all of the information that you have uploaded, and in effect, it becomes an expert on the contents of whatever sources are in that notebook. You can then ask the expert, i.e. your notebook, any questions you would like about your sources. And as I'll be showing you today, you can turn them into all sorts of really useful things. So I will definitely be diving a little bit into what some of the studio outputs are that you can create, because they really just keep bringing more and more of these out, and they're very impressive. Now, I wanted to also talk about why or how it's different to more generic AI assistants like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. And you've probably heard about those tools. I suspect many of you are actually using them. And actually, what would be really helpful to do a quick check-in. Be really nice to see in the chat what sorts of AI tools you're currently using. So hopefully they're tools that your organization allows you to use. So I'm expecting there's probably going to be lots of Copilot folk in the group. But what AI tools have you been using? Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, maybe some of the more specialist tools as well. Just pop into the chat just to let me get a bit of a feel for what folk are using. So yeah, I thought Copilot was going to be pretty popular. So we've got ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, Nano Banana. Excellent. And lots of Copilot coming in. Okay. Keep those responses coming, folks, and I'll check back in the chat again in a moment. So, how is NotebookLM different? So, the more generic AI assistants like Copilot, ChatGPT, those tools draw on a huge pool of training data and the open web. And that makes them really great for tasks like brainstorming or even outlining and a whole host of other things that you are likely using them for. But for research purposes, there's a couple of real problems with using those tools. The first, I'm sure many of you have come across, they very confidently make things up. They hallucinate. And that includes inventing citations that look real, but actually aren't. So that's problem number one. The second problem is that they aren't grounded in your specific literature that you're interested in. NotebookLM flips that around completely. It only works from the sources you give it. So it's not going to wander off and pull in random things from the internet, or at least it won't unless you ask it to. And every single answer it gives you is linked back to your source files. And it gives you a clickable citation that takes you right back to the exact passage that it's drawing on. So that's what makes it a lot more trustworthy for academic work in a way that the more generic tools just aren't. So it's not that it's better than ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude, it's just different. Those tools are tools, I like to think of them as tools that allow you to think outward. NotebookLM is a tool that lets you think really deeply with material that you have sourced. And I think for researchers, that's an incredibly helpful tool. Now I'm just going to head off a couple of what I suspect might be inevitable questions at this point. So one of them is, if I upload information to NotebookLM, is that shared elsewhere? So Google's published policy is that any content uploaded to NotebookLM is not used to train AI models. So the information you upload stays private to your account. Despite that, as I said earlier, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable uploading confidential research data to it, but I do feel very comfortable uploading other information that's not sensitive or confidential. The other thing I just want to head off at the pass here, because folk might get very excited when they see shortly what some of the capabilities of NotebookLM are. I really don't recommend this as a replacement for you reading, synthesizing, thinking, and writing. So I see NotebookLM as a tool that you can use to supplement all of those things. It's a tool in your toolbox that you can use. And we'll get in a moment to some of the things that it's particularly good at. But I don't see it as being a replacement for you actually reading your source articles, thinking through them, and developing your ideas from them. Now, I've just dealt with a couple of quick things that I think you might be sitting there asking. For those that weren't here at the beginning, I am just going to pop in the chat. I'm not making my slides available today because I'm mostly going to be demonstrating in NotebookLM, but I suspect many of you have come today with questions and will continue to have questions as I present. So I've just popped a link in the chat there to a PDF frequently asked questions document for you that hopefully has anticipated most of the questions you might have. If you have anything extra or you just want to hear me respond to something live, pop those questions into the Q&A panel as we go through. For those that might be catching up later with this session via the recording, the link to that resource will be immediately underneath the video if you are looking for it. Okay, let's switch screens. Right, let's have a bit of a chat about what we are seeing here. So I'm looking at the moment, this is NotebookLM with one of my notebooks open. And I just wanted to start by getting you orientated to the layout here because it really helps you make sense of the tool and how to use it. So it's essentially structured with 3 panels. So on the left-hand side here, these are the sources that I have uploaded to what NotebookLM calls a notebook. So this is just a series of PDF articles that you're seeing here. And I'll show you in a moment how these get in here. The middle area is the chat, and this is where the thinking happens. So this middle pane is essentially where you can ask questions about your sources, and NotebookLM will give you answers back. And on the right-hand side here is the studio panel. That's where you take all of the source information and your thinking around it, and you turn it into something usable. Audio overviews, video overviews, mind maps, presentation slides, and more. So I'll be showing you a few of those options towards the end of today's session. Now, a really simple way to remember that, and this is how I like to think of it. You load sources on the left, you think in the middle, and you create on the right. So you load on the left, you think in the middle, and you create on the right. So that's a little way of framing it that I find personally quite helpful. Let me show you how you'd start from scratch though. So I'm just going to jump to another tab. So this is me on the NotebookLM homepage. Now that frequently asked questions document I dropped in the chat does have a link. So if anyone wants to go straight there to NotebookLM, there is a live link in that document that you can use. So this is the home page. It's where all your notebooks live. Mine looks remarkably empty. I thought I'd explain that because I do use NotebookLM quite extensively myself. I use one of the paid versions of NotebookLM. So I'm on a pro plan for Google. That gives me access to NotebookLM as part of that. But I really wanted to demonstrate today in one of the free plans, just so that you could see how much is possible on a free plan. And my advice here is don't pay for it unless you really need to. You can have quite a decent number of sources in the free plan. And I always think when it comes to a tool that has both free and paid versions, it's a really good idea to just get started with it, see what it can do first before you decide jumping to a paid plan. Also worth checking out whether your organization might provide a paid plan for NotebookLM as well. So making a new notebook is really simple. Up in the top right, I've got a create new button. So I'm going to click on that now. And it's immediately going to ask me what sources I would like to bring in. And you can see here the range of different sources that are possible. So in a moment, I'm going to drag and drop some PDF files, but you can see got the option to bring in PDFs, documents, as I said earlier, websites, YouTube videos, can connect to your Google Drive. You can even just copy and paste text in if you would like to. And just hovering here over the and more option will give you a list of all the file types that will work with NotebookLM. Just before I bring some files in, I did just want to mention this little panel. So it is possible to ask NotebookLM to do the research for you. So you've got fast and deep research options here, and we've got either from the web or Google Drive. Now, I don't use that option myself. I think particularly in terms of the deep research feature, there are a number of other AI assistants that have much better deep research functionality than NotebookLM. And to me, the real strength of NotebookLM is the fact that it works with your sources. So I prefer to find my files outside of NotebookLM and bring them in, but there certainly is this option here if you would like to. So I'm imagining, just based on where everyone is attending from today, I'm imagining most of you will likely be bringing in PDFs of journal articles and book chapters, maybe some notes that you have in Microsoft Word, the occasional website, possibly. They would be the main types, but certainly there's quite a wide range of different file types there. Okay, let's bring my files in. So this is like one of those bad cooking shows. I've got pre-prepared examples. Just going to drag in just 6 PDFs to my notebook. So all I've done there is dragged and dropped them across. I could have also hit that upload button if I would prefer. And the notebook I am making today, my PhD was on self-regulated learning. And so I've got a collection of recent articles on self-regulation. Uh, I don't always like the title that NotebookLM gives your notebook, so I'm just going to call this self-regulated learning. We'll leave it at that. It has bought those PDFs. You can see them listed on the left-hand side, and I've got a nice little summary here in the center pane. Right. Quick word on how you might organize these. So when you are adding your sources in, common question I get asked is, what's the best way to organize them? Do you have one notebook for your entire PhD? Is it per chapter? What's the best way to do this? So much of my teaching, I end up using the phrase, it depends. This is very much one of those cases. So there's no single right answer to that. If you are on a free plan, you are going to be limited to the number of items you can bring in, and it's worth being aware of those limits. Probably having one notebook for your entire PhD is not going to work very well for that reason. On the paid plan, obviously, you've got a lot more flexibility. So I think maybe, having a notebook for each chapter you're writing, or perhaps each topic within your wider literature review, keeping it a little bit more constrained would be my advice there. But I would also really suggest that you keep it simple. So I don't think you need any complicated organizational tools here, just whatever is going to work for you personally. If you actually have your raw PDFs organized in folders, maybe that is something you replicate in NotebookLM just to keep things consistent and simple. Right. Let's talk about what we can do here. And I should have said, by the way, I keep talking about limits on the free plan. At the moment, the limit for the free plan is 50 sources for a single notebook. So just to head that question off at the pass as well. Imagine that will be enough. You don't want to be bringing in every single PDF that you have ever downloaded. So I think 50 sources is not a bad rule of thumb. Other little tip actually, while I think of it, I've tried a few different workflows with NotebookLM. The one that I find works best is that I upload items as soon as I come across them. Otherwise, I find I forget to do it later. So, keeping NotebookLM open in a tab in your browser as you're finding items, bringing them across, your future self will likely thank you for it. So we've got our sources in. Next part, and this is really the clever part, what do we actually do with these? So we've got this middle pane here in the chat. Remember I said this is where the thinking happens. And NotebookLM has suggested some questions for me. I can go with any of these just by clicking on them, or I can type my own question in. So I am actually going to pop in, what do these sources agree on about self? My typing and spelling is terrible today. Always the case when I'm doing presentations. Okay, what do these sources agree on about self-regulated learning? I'm just going to pop that in. That's going to have a little bit of a think about it. While it is thinking, by default, it's looking across all of my sources, but just a note that you can deselect items here if you want to. So you could do it just on one specific article, or you could do it on a subset of them if you would prefer. There we go. It has now popped up its answer. So based on those six sources, it's giving me a nice bulleted list summarizing where the sources agreed on that particular subject. Now, what is really great about that is these little numbers that you see, when I hover over them, it's actually showing me where it came from. And I can click on any one of these numbers, and off on the left-hand side, it's actually showing me where it has pulled that information from. So it's always linked back to the original source so that you as the researcher can verify what it's actually saying. Now, I thought we might just do one more question just to give you a bit of a feel. I might copy and paste this one in, seeing as my typing seems to be so terrible today. So where do these sources disagree and what are the points of contention? So we'll just pop that in as well. So you might find that you start to develop your own useful questions over time. It's probably worth keeping a bit of a list of them somewhere handy so they can be reused. A few other sort of suggestions for you, asking it to summarize methodological approaches across a series of studies. You might ask it to identify common limitations that authors acknowledge. You might ask it to compare how authors define a particular term, for example. Okay, what have we got? It has come up now, and there we go. Really interesting looking at where they were disagreeing, essentially. Now, one of the things you can do here, there is an option to save. So if the answer to one of your questions is really, really good and you think that might be useful to keep, you can click the Save to Note button. That's actually going to appear over here on the studio outputs side, and I'm about to move into what else is in the studio outputs area. And you can also click on these three little dots on the side and you can convert it to a source. So that would mean it would appear in the sources panel down the left-hand side, along with your other PDF sources. So it is worth remembering that anything really, really useful that you generate can also be saved for later reference. Last thing I want to say before we move into studio outputs, I ran a much longer version of this session a few months ago for my Research Accelerator members. It was a bit more of a hands-on session. And one of the questions that kept coming up was whether or not you could customize the way that NotebookLM responds to you. So I did just want to point out that just here, it's sort of top right of that middle chat panel, there is an option to configure the chat. So you might like to, if you're not really resonating with the way it's responding to you, a really simple example would be if it's popping everything in American English and you would prefer New Zealand or Australian or UK English, that's the kind of instruction you can pop in here. Can be worth actually using another AI tool, something like Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT, to help you develop instructions to pop into the chat configurations here. So you can ask it to give you a set of system instructions or a prompt that can be used within NotebookLM. If you do that, just a note, there is a limit of 10,000 characters, so you would also want to include that when you're asking another AI tool to customize instructions for you. Right, I'm going to leave that there. The chat has been very quiet so far, and so have the questions. There's only a couple come in. Remember, I love interaction in these sessions. Drop a message in the chat just quickly. Let me know what you think of it so far. Are you starting to see at this stage some of the possibilities for your own research work? I'm just going to pause there for a moment just to see what sort of chat messages are coming in. But I'm about to move into the studio outputs, which is where we can have some fun, essentially. So, great to see a few comments or questions coming in. So I have had someone in the group share that they have had or they've run into limits for the number of items that can be uploaded at one time on the free plan. Thank you for sharing that because I use the paid version. I haven't come across that before. Charlie has asked, how good is it at suggesting other sources? It's a great question, Charlie. I've personally found it a little bit mixed, to be honest. It could be just the areas that I was asking it to look into. But I think, there are so many AI-based specific tools for literature searches that you can use these days. So I don't think NotebookLM is possibly the best place to be doing those kinds of searches in. You've got various tools, Elicit, Litmaps, Research Rabbit, there's a whole host of them. Really happy actually, I'll include a list of other possible tools when I send an email out after the webinar with the recording link. So it's okay at suggesting other sources is what I'd say, Charlie. I think there's better fit for purpose tools. But if you were just wanting to do a quick search just to get a rough idea of a topic, it's absolutely fine for that. Let me get into some of the fun stuff here. Studio outputs. So I'm just going to jump across to a notebook. This is the one that I showed very briefly at the start. So this has got some of the sources that I just showed you, and it's got some studio outputs already created. I'm a little bit careful about how much I use AI for creating outputs. I'm aware that there are environmental impacts of using these types of tools. So I don't like to be creating outputs just for the sake of it or unless I really need them. So because of that, I've got some studio outputs that are already created that I'm going to be quickly opening up to show you today. In terms of how any of these got created, it was as simple as clicking on one of these buttons. So we've got an option for audio overview, slide deck, video overview, mind maps, and so on. And NotebookLM is adding to these all the time. So it's really worth being aware of checking back regularly and just seeing what else has been added. Now, there's a few of these that I just wanted to show you before we look at winding up in just over 10 minutes time. And those of you that teach will laugh at this. I have a ginormous note in my notes for my presentation that says, is Zoom sharing your sound? I knew I was going to forget that when I did a screen share at the start of today. So it's not sharing my sound. So just bear with me for a tick. I just want to make sure that you're going to be able to hear what I am about to show you. Excellent. Okay. So I thought we'd start out with the audio overview. Now, this is essentially a podcast style audio file that's created. So you can click on the audio overview button here if you want to be a bit more specific about how you'd like the overview to be created. You can just click on that little arrow that you see and that pops up. A box that allows you to be a little bit more specific around what you require. So I'm just going to cancel off that. I'll come down to, here we go. This is the audio overview that I created earlier. I'm just going to play this, but I did want to also make a note that there is an interactive mode with this tool. So that means that the podcast would start playing and then you could interject as a pretend listener to the podcast and you could ask the hosts a question about the file. So that's pretty neat. That's the kind of thing that has the potential to go very badly wrong and sideways in a live demonstration. So I'm just going to keep things simple and play this normally.
You know, more than half of first-year university students drop out in some regions, and it's not because they aren't smart enough.
Right.
It's because
They hold your hand the whole way.
Exactly. But the moment you shift to independent, self-paced learning, whether you're a freshman entering college or just a professional picking up a new skill online, all that structure just vanishes.
Completely gone.
So today we're figuring out how to build your own map. We are unpacking the hidden mechanics of how your brain handles self-guided learning, or, what researchers call self-regulated learning, or SRL.
Okay, folks, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I really hope that was playing for everyone. I think someone would have let me know in the chat if that wasn't the case. Let me know what you think of that. Are those audio overviews something that you might find helpful in terms of your own learning and understanding? I know a lot of researchers who use that for, they commute, and so they'll create audio overviews and save them. And then when they're on the bus or the train or in the car or whatever, they play them back. And it's just a great way to make the most of the time. And because it is in their own or based on their own sources. That is super helpful. It is one of those things you either love or you hate. And I know a lot of people really dislike the slightly artificial, false sounding voices. They're not particularly keen on the American voices either. Just spotted a message in the chat. Can you select different voices? Not at this time. That is a work in progress, I believe, but I think they're going to go for UK-based accents first, if I'm remembering correctly. So, love the comment from Karen there. Absolutely can see herself using it. What about other people? Is there any excitement out there about that audio overview feature? While folk are responding, I might just quickly show the video here as well.
All right, today we're going to unpack the science behind actually succeeding in an online course. Let's get right into it. So, have you ever felt this? You sign up for an online course, you're super excited, right? But then maybe a few weeks in, you just feel kind of lost, like you're adrift in a sea of videos. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's that feeling you're staring down these endless video playlists. It's so easy to put things off, and you kind of feel like you're completely on your own. I mean, staying motivated, it's a real struggle.
Once again, I'm not going to play that whole video, but that is basically a custom video that has been created based on the sources. And I think, for folk that are visual, once again, auditory learners as well, that's a pretty fabulous feature. My PhD was in self-regulated learning, as you've probably gathered by the sources I've got here. And one of the things that can be really helpful for learning is working with information in many, many different forms. And I think NotebookLM just really opens up the possibilities for us to be able to do that. Now I'm just going to spend a couple more minutes before I take final questions, just showing you a few more of these options. I'm just clicking here. This is the infographic feature within NotebookLM. So asking for an infographic, I've played around a little bit with this on some of my own material. I do find if you have quite a large number of sources and they're quite varied, it can be a little bit hit and miss in terms of what it creates. But if you have a smaller, more focused set of sources, it's literally a click of a button to create this sort of thing, which is pretty impressive. Just close that down. And then the other thing which I think is incredibly valuable for researchers, something newish that they've added in is this data table option. So I've created a data table here to show you. I'll just click on that now. And so this is for these sources that you see here. I'll click on the view prompt option so you can see what I asked it. So I asked it to create a table comparing sample size, methodology, data collection method, and main findings across the empirical studies. So this is basically, it took a few moments to generate, but it has created a summary for me. I remember making these sorts of summaries by hand myself when I was a PhD student. You would want to double check. You double check everything in any AI tool. So this is great, but you'll want to just check the accuracy of it. But you can also export it out so that you can work with it in Excel or Google Sheets or other sources as well. And that actually goes for any of the studio outputs that I'm showing today. I'll just come back actually to the studio, just clicking on the three little dots off on the side here. There are options too. Actually, let's click a better one. There we go. There is an option to download, and there are also share options as well. I think the last one I'll show you, and if you have got any questions that I haven't answered yet today, get those in the Q&A panel for me. I'm just going to click on them. Actually, let me show you the mind map I've made rather than making one from scratch. So this is a mind map based on these sources. And these are the main topics that were covered in the sources. I'll just click on the little arrow here that's branching these out. And if you want to investigate any of these in more detail, you can actually just click on it. I remember when I looked at this morning, I don't remember Pinterest dimensions actually being an SRL model, so I might want to investigate what they're talking about here. So I'm just going to click on that option, and in the chat here, discuss what these sources say about Pinterest dimensions in the larger context of core theoretical models. So it's great for getting a bit of a bird's eye overview. I'm the kind of researcher, I can get very bogged down in the detail of these things, and I really love that mind map feature to be able to get a bit of a bird's eye overview and then dive into any of the specific detail if I need to. Okay, now there are lots of other studio outputs here. I haven't gone through all of them. I'm doing some part-time study at the moment, and I'm loving the quiz and the flashcards option. So if that's relevant to any of you, that is well worth a look. And there are some, if I click on the reports button here, things like study guides, briefing documents, and so on that you might like to explore as well. So the key thing around the studio outputs is it's taking your personal sources and it is transforming that information in many, many different ways for you to get a deeper understanding. Okay, I was expecting a little bit more enthusiasm in the chat, folks. So we've had a few enthusiastic comments about those studio outputs. Let me know what you think if you haven't already. I'd love to see a little bit more interaction there. So quick recap before we take final questions. NotebookLM is really great for working deeply with a defined set of sources. So a collection of research articles, your methods readings, a body of your own notes. You wouldn't want to use it for things like open-ended brainstorming. I think there's much better tools for that purpose. And the magic of NotebookLM is it's grounded in your own sources with citations. So think about NotebookLM as a thinking partner that sits over top of your sources. It doesn't replace other tools, so it doesn't replace your reference manager or your note-taking app or your own ability to summarize and synthesize sources in your own words. So NotebookLM sits alongside all of those. And lots of different things it might be good for, obviously working through a body of literature, making comparisons across authors, methods, topics. Great to get up to speed really quickly with a new field, grab 10, 15 papers, pop them in, generate some overviews to just quickly get a sense of what people are saying. Great for creating teaching materials for those of you that are lecturers in the group. I've seen NotebookLM used very effectively by some of my Research Accelerator members. For those of you that are doctoral or master's students, it's great for preparing for supervision meetings. Great for conference presentations, and as I've said, great for audio overviews when you are wanting to learn on the go. So they are just a few of the possibilities. Now we're heading towards time, so I'm going to just deal with any unanswered questions in a moment, and I can't wait to see some of the enthusiastic chat messages that have come in. But if you have enjoyed today, this is the kind of thing that we do all the time inside Research Accelerator. So if you missed me mentioning it at the start, Research Accelerator is an online community of practice for researchers. It brings together self-paced courses with live workshops like this one. As I mentioned before, this actually came from a 2-hour hands-on masterclass that I ran with my members a couple of months ago. We had the opportunity for them to explore their own literature in the session. We shared and brainstormed ideas together. It was really fabulous. So they're the kinds of sessions we run in Research Accelerator. Everything's recorded, so those kinds of sessions are also always available on demand in the library. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, I am just popping in the chat a link to where you can find out more information. And I'll also include this when I send a recording out later today. Okay, folks, any final questions? It has just gone a minute past the official finish time. I can hang around for a few minutes though if there are any unanswered questions. If you need to slide off, please feel free, and thank you once again for joining me today. But let's just have a check. There were some very enthusiastic comments. Can't wait to start using it. This is awesome. I can see the potential using it for thinking, building flashcards for learning. Fabulous. Great. Wonderful. And I think I have answered, yes, I have. So I've answered all of the questions that came in. I will include, as I promised, a list of some of the more fit for purpose literature tools that you might like to consider for things like finding research gaps. Could certainly be done in NotebookLM, but because it's drawing on your sources, the danger is that you may have missed something. So I'll include that in my email as a follow-up. But I think I've dealt with everything else. So lots of you signed up to the rest of the webinars in this series. We've got a Reclaim Your Time session coming up next, a couple of in vivo sessions, and then one around choosing digital tools. So really look forward to seeing some of you in those other sessions. Get your name down for them if you haven't already. And it's always great to attend live. I don't know about all of you, but I find if I don't attend these types of sessions live, I end up with a whole ton of recordings piling up that I never have time to watch. So well done to all of you for being here in person, showing up live. And I do hope you found that useful. Don't hesitate to get in touch if I can be of any assistance, or if you've got any questions about Research Accelerator or anything else. And good luck and have fun using NotebookLM. Bye, everyone.